Hello, my name is Emily Elizabeth Dickinson, and I was born in Amherst, Massachusetts in 1830, in a grand yellow mansion built for my grandfather. I lived there with 3 generations of my family, my parents, grandparents, brother Austin, and sister Lavinia, for 9 years. My immediate family and I then moved to another home on Pleasant Street, where we lived for 15 years before moving back to the original homestead. There, on Pleasant Street, my bedroom at the back of the house overlooked West Cemetery, where I saw the people of the town of Amherst, the cemetery as busy, as active as if it were a main street. I know there's more medicine and more medicinal help today, but when I was young, disease like tuberculosis ran rampant among the most vulnerable of the population. Consumption killed 1 in 4 children. I saw many people I knew mourning, burying their loved ones, some of whom included my friends, aching as a young child and teenager. In my lifetime, I saw the Civil War open and end too. These deaths and hatreds made me question the ideals of my parents' and grandparents' religion. I was raised to become a Calvinist. To become, indeed, for one of their principles was that all humans are born wicked, and in order to achieve salvation, they must make a grand profession of faith to devote themselves entirely to the Congregationalist institution. They also believed that a person's final destination, either heaven or hell, had been decided by God long before any one of us came onto this earth. This idea did not resonate well with me, and I once wrote in a letter, I do not respect doctrines, and so ignored a sermon on the concept of predestination. Your modern scholars find myself and certain aspects of her difficult to comprehend. They rely on my poems and letters to create a clear picture of who I was. But like you, at different times I believed and was different. I wrote poems about the unnecessity of church services and how God was indifferent to my prayers. And I also wrote a poem on faith's importance. I was different at different times. Because of this, those querulous academics might think I was an atheist, or perhaps that I followed my own spiritual path. What they cannot dispute is that by age 30, I had ceased attending church, and the ideals of faith, God, the church, and religion are relevant to my poetry. My love life is a very uncertain topic for some as well. Though I increasingly more often stayed at home, I kept up with a wide range of correspondence, sending them often my poetry to ask for advice. One of these correspondents was a judge named Otis Phillips Lord, with whom I shared an emotional written connection. There were also 3 letters, now be titled the Master Letters, that I wrote to some unknown master, and everyone seems to have an opinion on their identity. Rather close examinations, too, have been made into my female friendships, specifically with my sister-in-law, Susan Gilbert Dickinson, and my friend, Catherine Anthon. While some think they were just dear friends of mine, others assume that we were closer than sisters. Again, the facts are sparse. I never married and stayed at home for my waking years. Another topic that is of concern to the educated is my staying at home. I am called a recluse today. In my girlhood, I attended school, though I loved home, and had friends I saw regularly. When I was required to stay at Mount Holyoke for a female seminary I attended there, I missed profusely the freedom and comfort of home and the friends and family who were living on there without me. I, slowly resigned myself to home, not just that of my house and family, but that of my mind. And still some speculate on exactly why I became reclusive. Perhaps some think. It was an innocent desire to be around those I loved, to be home, comfortable, to be free, to write poetry. Others assume that I had an illness, or multiple illnesses. They speculate about hypertension, iritis, kidney disease, latent tuberculosis. It would have been better, they say, for me to be at home, for my health, to be taken care of, if need be, by my sister Lavinia, who remained unmarried just as I. Still others wonder, could it have been fear? Fear of what the public would say or think. Fear of being alone in the world, for my own was very different than that of the outside. Perhaps it was an ailment of the mind. I believe the fear of the outside world is called agoraphobia. Nevertheless, I cannot imagine living my life in any other place other than Amherst, Massachusetts, in that house. My friends and family were able to reach me there, through letters, visits, or through living right beside me. There, I could write in peace, mostly in my bedroom, and I wrote, and wrote 1,775 poems in my life. The ability to engage with one's spirit and create with it is precious, and it was everything to me. I was born on December 10th, 1830, in a grand yellow brick house in Amherst, Massachusetts. And it was there that I would live and write for most of my life, gradually confining myself to just our house, then just my room, then just my bed, as my health worsened. And on May 15th, 1886, I die. I was called back to God, to heaven, to whatever spirituality may be. At least that's what I wrote to some dear cousins shortly before. That was my last letter. I left the living with very specific instructions, not for the funeral ceremony, and I am glad that my dear friend and correspondent of many years, Thomas Higginson, read the Bronte poem, "No Coward Soul Is Mine" then. But I left instructions for the procession, for my goodbye. I was carried out the door of my house by Amherst collegiates, then picked up again by 6 hired Irishmen who worked the grounds, carried around my dear garden, through the barn from end to end, across the many fields behind my home, all the way to West Cemetery, the cemetery my room overlooked as a girl. I was buried in a white coffin, in a white dress, with flowers and evergreen branches around me. I heard a fly buzz when I died. The stillness in the room was like the stillness in the air between the heaves of storm. The eyes around had wrung them dry, and breaths were gathering firm for that last onset when the king be witnessed in the room. I willed my keepsakes, signed away what portion of me be assignable. And then it was there interposed a fly, with blue, uncertain, stumbling buzz between the light and me. And then the windows failed, and then I could not see to see. In my lifetime, only a handful of my poems were published. I disliked the process, and editors would make my poems standard and give them unwarranted titles. After I died and my sister Lavinia had burned all my letters at my request, she found an enormous collection of poetry written in my hand in my room. Lavinia felt they had to be published, so she asked my dear sister Sue if she would edit the poems and get them ready. For some reason, Lavinia wanted it done faster, and so she asked a family friend, Mabel Loomis Todd, to advance the work. Mr. Higginson helped as well, and many poems have been published of my works. In my first letter to Thomas Higginson, my purpose in writing was to ask him if my verse is alive. Is it? None of what I have told you now pertains to you, and I have long been nobody. So the verse must stand for itself, and you can decide if you stand with it. Are you nobody too?